battle in these days of such animosity and acrimony. Where is hope when fear insists that we, the people, are powerless against big money, shoving millions into politicians' pockets? Or when big ag desecrates Earth's biodiversity with its genetically identical seeds? When big oil ramrods another pipeline across wilderness and native lands? Hope is for fools, fear hisses, whenever I reach out for a dose of it. Fear wraps its bony fingers around my neck, and spits on my hope du jour cocktail. It stomps on my "it's all on purpose" mantra with glee. It cremates my faith that we are all one, with blistering images of holocausts and genocides. Are you so naive to believe that there's anything you peons can do that will make a difference? Fear cackles. Shaking my head, I wonder where, if anywhere, hope still lives. So I pack up my water bottle, my journal, and my eco-angst to escape the long arms of too much information. I slide into the car seat, buckle up, and hit the road, white knuckles clenching the steering wheel. As soon as I leave the freeway behind and begin the ascent to the mountain park, a strange thing happens. I catch myself humming. My fingers tap the steering wheel. How can I explain these strange expressions of calm? By the time I park at the nature center, my entire body feels eased and eager to hit the trail like a puppy freed from its cage. The scorching noontime sun nearly incinerates my composure, though, when I open the car door. I will myself out of the car and force my feet onto the dusty path, one foot in front of another, every step an exertion. My boots feel like they're filled with lead shot, while my backpack bulges with the weight of my worry for the world. When I reach the lookout point some 30 minutes later, I crouch for a moment to catch my breath, scan for a shady place to sit and write. Seeing none at hand, I tiptoe off the trail and perch among the bony spines of the dry chaparral. I hunker down a yard away from the edge, from where this steep slope begins its swan dive of some 1,500 feet, landing down in the beehive of the city. Tiny cars stream in a colorful ribbon that bisects the lowland. Boxes made of concrete and wood and glass line up on either side of it like spectators at a parade. A monotonous drone rumbles upward, a montage of indistinct sounds. It's the hum of the urban human occupying its niche. The steadfast stillness of the chaparral on this windless day makes for sharp contrast to the constant motion of the world below. The commotion is jarring, even from this distance. I shift my awareness from the din below to study my scrub bush neighbors. Just about the same height as my seated self, they offer the perfect subterfuge, concealing my delinquency in ditching the designated trail. I endeavor to emulate their silence. Just moments later, I resist a temptation to check my phone for updates, even though I know there's no reception for that sort of communication here. I turn to my neighbor to the right and wonder how he manages this motionless. From the denuded looks of him, he seems gone for, the life fully sucked out of him. It's hard to say whether for sure he's a goner, but that would explain his leaflessness. Or perhaps it's a response to the drought, dropping leaves to cut evaporative losses of precious moisture until sustenance returns. Winter is a season when life-sustaining manna in the form of water usually falls from heaven around here. Though we sit squarely 1 week before the start of summer, the bone-dry complexions of my companions evidence a lack of rain over the past few years. Last winter was particularly parched, delivering little moisture to help tide the local flora and fauna over the rainless season ahead. Late spring did surprise us with a drenching rain a couple of weeks ago, soaking us with a single inch of blessed precipitation. Scanning my chaparral companions, I noticed that a few bear a sprinkling of tender leaflets. Perhaps that 1 inch was just enough to awaken some of the scrubs from the lull that dearth induces. Perhaps a kernel of hope implanted in their DNA keeps them alive but hibernating during arid times. Perhaps that impulse for life is what nudges the scrub awake when the first rain falls. The old man on my right, however, was not so easily swayed by a scant inch of rain falling altogether too late in the season. He's the curmudgeon, the cynic, the old-timer who tells long stories about the good old days when rain fell plentifully every winter. Curmudgeon has been here far too many seasons to be taken in so easily. He grows almost perpendicular to the steep slope. His angular posture gives him the air of a finger pointed at the folly of the scrubs who have dared to sprout green in this parched time and place. Perhaps Curmudgeon's bank of hope has been spent. Perhaps he senses that our world is changing. Perhaps he questions, as I do, if his species is long for this planet. Perhaps he ponders, as I do, what kind of world our children are inheriting. I suddenly feel a strong kinship with his bent and gnarled curmudgeon at my side. Without Wi-Fi or satellite signals, we have shared something that connects us. We are both wondering if the next rain will give us what we need to reconnect with hope. Hang in there, buddy, I say as I stand to leave. I'm wondering the same things. My boots feel lighter as I retrace my steps back to the car. Though my worries for the world still bounce around in my pack, the weight of them feels less for having shared them. Is it crazy to wonder if Curmudgeon feels any better for having met me? Rhetorical question. The next day, I check in for a fundraiser walk 100 miles away. I had pre-registered online, so it was just a matter of picking up my number badge and the commemorative t-shirt. Anticipating the usual boxy shirt emblazoned with the name of the event, the design of this one elates me. The soft pink fitted tee bears 4 words: live, love, laugh, and the 4th word in bold letters in the center of the shirt, hope. Tears spring to my eyes to realize I don't have to wait for the next rain to reconnect with hope, and neither does Curmudgeon. I can see him as clearly in my mind as when I sat next to him yesterday. I look upward to the east as I share this revelation with him. Maybe it's just the anything is possible spirit of this event, but I feel a curious certainty that he heard me. Or maybe he knew about hope all along. Maybe he's the one that lured me off the path to sit, be still, and dare to dream again. I've heard of totem animals, but could there be a totem scrub brush? Oh, just wait for the eye roll when I tell the kids about my sagebrush friend virtually tagging along the fundraiser path. Time to walk.
Thank you for reading that. That was wonderful.
Obviously, it was written a few years ago. We've had good rain here in California recently, and that was during the time of drought, and obviously well before our strange days of staying at home for the pandemic. But there's something about it that I thought might still speak to how we're feeling in this time. So
Speaking
thank you for allowing me the opportunity to read it.
speaking of the pandemic and current events, what have you been thinking about in this regard, especially now, today, Earth Day, during this time period where we're all at home? And
Well, I've been thinking a lot of things, and thank you for asking. And only some of them are fit to share in this in this conversation. But I've been thinking a lot about what does it mean that we've been forced out of number one. We've been forced out of the things that we think we can't give up, the things that we thought could never happen, the things that that people in power have said could never happen. We could never shut down industry to save the planet. We could never do this. Of course, this all comes, I realize, at a tremendous cost of life and livelihood for a lot of people. I don't mean to diminish the suffering of and the hard work of many people. All that said, it does spring into highlight. Just makes me question what the things that even I say I'm unwilling to do for the planet. I'm unwilling to give up my air conditioning when it's 90 degrees where I live. And yet here we are giving up things that maybe we thought we wouldn't be able to. So it's a time of reflecting and seeing a new light where the things that we have always assumed, I think, is the most important thing for me right now.
Your website says that you're stumbling along the line between eco-mindfulness and eco-madness. Do you want to expound on that a little bit?
Well, I could talk about that for a long time, but I will try to be succinct here. And and just for example of in this story of how I react and feel about things that come along in the daily news, and even just in showing up in the mail in my mailbox, or little triggers that come up and are so frustrating, and yet it's not easy to know how to fix them. There are no easy answers. I mean, I think many of us agree that solar panels are good. Solar energy is good. It's renewable, and yet there's so many inputs that go into making solar panels, and what do we do with them when they're done? There's no simple answers, and so we have to keep making our best choices, because there are no perfect choices. And so I tend to overthink things. I'm a Gemini, and I think I think too much. And so it's a constant battle to quiet the noise of the mind that says, why are you going to do that? That doesn't matter. You know, nobody else is doing that. You're just one person. What is anybody else? So there's big people out there making decisions that are going to discount everything you're doing. And all of that taken too seriously and too much can lead to what I call eco madness, and also just to despair and complacency. I give up. What can I do? And so I spend a certain amount of time over here, and I also lean into my mindfulness sort of practices that help me find some peace with all of that, and realize that what I'm doing is the best that I can do with what I got from where I am right now. I look at the decisions I made 10 years ago, of course, and I think, what was I thinking? And again, I remind myself it was the best that I could do with what I had, with where I was at that moment in time.
So when you wrote Love Earth Now, did you have a target audience in mind, like, ecologists or ecology-centric people, or did you have any other?
You know, when I started writing, it was for my own therapeutic purposes. It was literally as one of my mindfulness practices that I talked about, is a way to deal with frustration and anger and despair. And I never thought of an audience when I started writing. And then when I started honing it, okay, maybe there's something here that I could be sharing with other people. I really didn't have an audience in mind. I think that, and just as a disclosure, I studied environmental geology. I studied environmental law. I have a background in environmental studies, and yet I wrote my writing is for all of us going through the same kinds of things that I'm going through on a day-to-day basis. We know, we hear, we read, we understand that there are some bad things happening to our environment. There are real water challenges, there are real energy challenges, there are real climate challenges, and yet what can we do about them? And so I think I hope, what I hope is that I'm writing for all of us who are caring and concerned about what's happening, and not for a particular agenda. Yeah.
You mentioned your background in law and science, and how did you go from these to more rational ways of dealing with environmental issues by doing some of the crazier things that you highlighted in your book, like cackling with geese and kicking phone books?
Yeah, that just sort of came with the territory, I guess. I and I'll start with this story, that I came upon this sort of writing through a one-day writing workshop where my kids were young, and a friend of mine, someone I had just really recently met, was offering a one-day writing workshop, and I thought that was be a good way, a good excuse to escape the family life and changing diapers or whatever was going on at the time. And I really stumbled upon this interest in this writing. She had us do an exercise where she had us draw a heart in the middle of a page and then strings out from the heart and write topics that arose as we thought about our hearts. And what came out were all these environmental themes. And I hadn't been thinking about it in my conscious mind, but I realized, of course, I'm thinking about it as a mother of young children. Of course, I'm worried about what kind of planet I'm leaving them, what kind of environment they're growing up with. And so the themes really started just pouring out from that experience. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to be writing about environment, maybe I should be spending more time outdoors. And so I did what I always do when I want to be sure I get myself to do something. I invited other people to join me. I started a meetup for writers and called the Natural Muse, and we meet up in different places in nature. Yes, even in Los Angeles, there are still places in nature where you can sit and be free of pavement and cars and all of that. So we spent a lot of time writing outdoors, and these experiences just started happening. It's amazing. I mean, I love writing in a coffee shop. There's just that vibe, that energy, that caffeination going, and creativity, and everybody's typing away. And yet, I would never have come up with these ideas and inspiration had I not left that coffee shop and sat on the side of a trickle of a stream, or in a grassy meadow where I mean, literally, I think I was writing on a piece of paper that day, writing in a notebook, so focused on what I'm doing and freaking out when I look over here and this little mole head pops up out of the ground. There's just so many instances of simple things, of ordinary experiences in nature that struck me as extraordinary because I took the time to be there.
Now, in your
I've
book,
spoken a while and I kind of forgot the question. I hope I answered it.
no, you did. You did great.
Okay, good.
In the book, you touched on your modern day priestess training. Could you expound on that a little bit and tell us how it factors in the work that you did in your book?
Sure. I came upon the modern day priestess training really after my mother passed away, and she went suddenly. It was a shock. She was always a vibrant person. She was so full of life, and it wasn't just me. People who knew her were surprised, and I was devastated. I had really young kids, and they were close to her. They were devastated. I was just left with this huge, big vat of unresolved grief when my friend, Reverend Kate Roger, came to me and was telling me about this program she was starting called the Modern Day Priestess program. And I really had no idea what that was, but it sounded, my broken heart said yes before I even knew what it was. But I insisted she'd tell me something about it. And she promised that I would learn to weave. I have to read this because I want to get this factual because I can't make this up. Ageless wisdom mysteries with modern practical technologies to make a more inspired, conscious contribution in this world. Well, that's exactly what ancient mysteries. That's exactly what I wanted. I was looking for something, and I trusted my friend, although I was still a little, being a lifelong book learner, I was still a little uncertain about the whole thing. And so I said yes, not really knowing what I'd signed up for. But it turned out to be a year-long program of learning different practices, Kundalini yoga and prayer, affirmative prayer practice. And what else did we do? We did meditation. And I'd done meditation all my life. I'd done yoga, so that part was all well and good. It was this one exercise, which sounds so simple now. Looking back now, it sounds simple, but at the time, I just hated it. It was called the just sit with nature exercise. She would literally send us, we were meeting in these beautiful grounds, which unfortunately were mostly destroyed in the mudslide in Montecito, California a few years ago. It's really, they're working to restore it, but really tragic. It was about 10, 12 years ago when we were meeting there. She sent us out into these beautiful grounds, nothing to complain about, except she gave us this simple exercise: go sit with nature and be still. Well, again, Gemini mind, I want to be active, I want to be thinking about things, I want to be doing something, and to sit and do nothing. And it was hot, and I was just annoyed, and I didn't like it. And I had did tell me before we even went out there, I was not gonna like it. And so I sat out, I picked up a spot among this orange grove and thinking about how angry I was. And then I did notice this little bee coming in, and it landed on this tiny little white flower. And I did notice that it was balanced. It was for, a creature of its size. It was quite large for the flower. And I made some observations about it. That's it. And then when we went back in, everyone was reporting on their experiences. They were life-changing, mind-blowing. And I sat in the corner kind of fuming because I didn't think I had anything to say. So when it came my turn, I said just this little bit. I saw a bee, it zoomed around, it landed, like, look here. It rested, and then it zipped away. I think maybe it means to look at my own busyness. I'd been very, very busy. I had my own business. I had 2 young children. Maybe it means to look at my own busyness, appreciate even the smallest bit of beauty, take a rest, and then I can get back to my life, or something like that. And I thought little else about it until after the training had ended. And Dr. Ellie, who had been in the training with me, she's also my acupuncturist, I was in with her for a session, and I was complaining to her about those awful sit with nature exercises. Oh, wasn't that the worst? And she said, Cheryl, are you serious? You were the one that would come in from those exercises and sum up the meaning of life in 1 or 2 sentences. I was stunned. I thought I was like a D student among Mensons in that exercise. So what she said really surprised me, and it made me stop and think that maybe there is a deeper wisdom beyond my law training, beyond my geology, my science background, the engineering laboratory. Maybe there's a deeper wisdom out there, and maybe I could be open to that too.
What would your top 3 suggestions that you would have, if to pick out of everything that you have, the top 3 suggestions you would have that people can do to help the planet?
I'm really loath to prescribe anything that people should or shouldn't be doing. Number one, it's a good question. Let me just say that that's the kind of question I like to ask. I want to know. Tell me 3 things. I'll go off and do them. Good to go. And yet I don't think it's that simple. We are 7 billion people on this planet. We each come in with our own unique abilities, experiences, and calls to service. And so for anyone to say everyone should be doing this or no one should be doing that, I feel like it's missing the mark, that we are disregarding what each of us has to offer. And so my number one thing is for each of us to engage in whatever kind of mindfulness practice calls to you, whether that means walking, whether that means just writing, whether it means meditation or prayer, whatever it means that gets you into a zone outside of our usual conscious thoughts, and ask for yourself, what is it for me to do? And notice also, and that's number one, and notice number 2, just as you're moving about your day, noticing those things that really bug you the most, and maybe sit with that for a moment of reflection and say, what can I do about this? I'm sure we could all sit with the many long list of things that we can't change and we can't do, especially right now. It's an extraordinary moment where there's even more limited in what we can and cannot, what we can do. And so I submit that our souls may know more than our conscious brains, and that there may be information in whatever you call soul, spirit, nature, divine, holy, sacred, and tune in as you are willing. And I realize this may not be something that is interesting or available to a lot of people. So I invite you to explore what words and what practice and how this you could make this your own, because that's always important for me, is how can I make this my own, because I don't like to be told what to do. I'm still pretty much stuck in a mid-teenager mode in that regard. That's only two. Is that okay?
That's totally fine.
Okay.
I know it's kind of a big question right now. Um, I don't know. I wanted to ask you if you've seen the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report.
Hmm.
It has some dire predictions for and severe impacts for our planet, and it's just in few as like a decade or 11 years from now. Did the readings of this report change anything about what you thought or done for this book?
Yeah, pretty much I had to lock up the liquor cabinet because it is pretty depressing and serious, and that comes just prior to this dire and serious situation we're in right now. And maybe this is kind of a sidelight, but I'm thinking that this pandemic is making us realize, because climate change has been happening over this long period of time, and it's more difficult, I believe, for us as humans to deal with things that stretch long and wide, versus in a crisis, we're more, I feel more adept at knowing what to do. Okay, stop the bleeding, call 911. You know, there are steps to take when it's like this is happening right in the immediate moment. But when it's yawning over long decades, it's easier to say, put it off, put it off. I know. I studied environmental laws and science decades ago, and here we are. So it's interesting what this time is teaching us about how to respond and what we can and can't do. I think I mentioned on that theme earlier. And remind me again of the question, because I did take a little bit of a sidetrack there.
Just about
Right. And again, taken seriously, it means I need to be ever more devoted to the commitments I have made to the planet, to my community, to my family, to my children. What am I willing to do, and what is my particular call to action? I will tell you, I'm not someone that's going to be chaining myself to trees or spending. I've gone to protest, but I mean spending long hours on a protest line, because I just, frankly, I don't have the bladder control for that anymore. So, I mean, my calls to action are here: speaking, writing, and composting. I love my compost bin, and it makes me happy to feel like I am contributing to this amazing process of turning what would otherwise be waste into black gold that is healing, nutritious. That makes me feel good. I do that. I tend my compost every single day that I'm home, because it makes me feel good. And that's important to me, to feel like I have something to give that matters. I'm not saying everybody should compost. I'm suggesting that everyone reach out and tune into that thing that makes you feel like, yes, there's something that I can do that matters. It matters to the world. It matters to my community. It matters to my family. It matters to how I feel about being alive. And the better I feel about being alive, that I have something to contribute, the more I can go and do and contribute in other bigger, more meaningful ways.
Lovely, thank you. I wanted to ask you, last time you spoke at the university, you mentioned some vignettes from your book where you had interesting encounters with flora and fauna in the wild. If you'd like to recount one or two of those, that'd be really wonderful.
Yeah, I mentioned about the mole popping up. I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but really when you're a city dweller, just sitting in a city of Los Angeles park and this little face pop, things like that. My other favorite is sitting in a local neighborhood park and back resting against a tree. And I think I was typing on an iPad that day, and these little bits fell down upon me, and they were moist and they had been chewed. And my mother self is just like recoiling in horror. These are germs. It's nasty. It was like, But I kept looking around. I couldn't find it. I finally spotted this squirrel that had been taking these walnut acorn seeds. What are they? And chewing off the green bits of flesh and spitting them on me. And it was just, once I realized what was happening, it was hilarious. Here I am. How many people in the city of Los Angeles are at work with a squirrel spitting green, moist bits upon them? So it was torn between, I should be hand sanitizing myself, and I had laughing because it's an ordinary experience, and yet it's an extraordinary experience for a lot of city people who just don't have that many encounters with nature besides, capturing the spiders and guarding them outside.
I wanted to ask one more question before we open it up to questions from.
Yeah, I see there's a question over there on the chat. So
one last question.
Okay.
Especially right now during this time period where we're going through a lot of stress, all of us, and experiencing a lot of dire things right now.
Mm-hmm.
What advice do you have for someone who's feeling overwhelmed and distressed about the environment and the world at large?
Turn off the news. Number one, turn off Twitter, turn off all these sources of bad news. And I'm not to say that we need to be ignorant. I mean to say that we have many of us have such a steady stream of news that is disturbing, alarming, scary, frightening. And whether it's about the environment, whether it's about health and wellness, whether it's about hospital care, whatever it is, it's good to be informed on a certain level and then take a break and do what fulfills, sustains, nurtures you, whether it be art, whether it be listening to music, whether it be comedy. God bless the comedians right now. Thank you, thank you, thank you. and I hope that this time, for at least for those of us who are sequestering ourselves at home and have more time on our hands than usual, at least for us, that this is giving us permission in a way that maybe we don't usually, to sit and engage in things that make us feel good and hopeful, because reading more news, hearing more news, listening to another news podcast is not going to change the situation. It's only going to, for me anyway, make me feel more despairing. And so I need to get my information, and then this much time in restoring myself and my hopefulness, my well-being, my spirituality, whatever it is that helps me feel like this life is good, it's worth living, and it's important. We're here on purpose at this extraordinary moment in time. Why? Why am I here at this extraordinary moment in time? What am I here to contribute, to learn, to do, to be, and explore that?
Well, thank you so much for all of that. I mean, I really enjoyed hearing your POV and on the book and these questions that we've been asking. I know a lot of them are kind of hardball questions. I want to open up to the floor and to some of the people that have had questions that posted them in the comments. So the first person I want to open it up to is Rajinder Burr, sorry, and I'll go ahead and unmute you right now. Go ahead.
Hi, Cheryl. Hello, everybody. My name is Raj. So, thank you for your spending your precious time.
Hi, Raj.
Hi. So, my question is based on your geology and environment study and experience. So, what is the most significant negative cause on the environment? The number
Complac-
one cause.
I think complacency. I think we just get used to how things are. We get used to thinking there's nothing I can do about it. And I know for myself, I've been there many years. Just okay, I just have to go on the way it is because that's just how it is. That's just get real. That's just how it is. And not only does that destroy our opportunity to act, but it even destroys the kernels of wisdom that we carry within us, that we get from our guides, that we get from our nudges, from the coincidences, wherever you get your insights. Where do we get our insights? It's just like shutting that off and saying, I'm not listening to that anymore. And that's a great loss. That's a great loss to to ourselves, to humanity, to our families, our friends, because it's like saying, yes, you're giving me this great gift, and I'm saying, no, thanks, I'm busy. And so I know it's easy to sink into complacency because it's comfortable, and thinking about what can I do and what the problems are, it's it can be very uncomfortable. And it asks me to do things like this, to talk for an hour, just and going off on tracks, and I don't know what I'm saying, and it would be easy for me to say, I'm not going to put myself out there like that. I'm going to remain comfortable. But it's in the discomfort that most of our great, I mean, if you think back in your life, probably many of the most amazing things come from times we've put ourselves in a uncomfortable, out of our comfort zone, unusual, unique circumstance. And whether we're forced to or whether we chose to. And so I suggest finding ways, because I don't like the discomfort either. Finding ways, I make deals with myself. If you do this 1 hour thing, then you get a good, nice glass of Chardonnay tonight. I'm not saying that's a good example, but that finding ways to reconnect with that pipeline, maybe, of information, of inspiration, of insight, and sit with a willingness to not know. Because frankly, all the decades and degrees I hold have taught me less about how to live a day in my life than living a day in my life. I mean, being present with the day, being present with the information, and noticing I can have a complete, utter plan. This is what's happening today, and that's not what's happening today. And my daughter says, let's do this. Yeah, let's go do that. And noticing what's present, what's coming up, and what's information, and what is inspiring you to take action, to pick up the phone and call someone, to write something, to create something, noticing those even more than what, I'm not saying throwing rationality out the window. Please do not do that. We have enough of that. No. Being open to more ways that information can reach us. Not fewer, but more. Does that help?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? I'm going to go ahead and unmute all.
I want to say yes to Louise, who says you can't get that walnut experience in Starbucks. No, you cannot. At least I hope not.
So I've unmuted it all. So anybody has any other questions, they can go ahead and ask now if they like, or comments. or if anybody wants to share something similar.
Paper then, or are they cloth?
Okay.
Has anybody got something they're going to do today to celebrate Earth Day in your own way?
If you want to, the nurses, some nurses are complaining that they're given one a week and told, keep it. I mean, there are more successful than that, but they're told, keep it in a plastic bag. So
I'll see.
the fact that it's now sunny means that we can disinfect stuff like that easily. You just go outside to the full sun, Good.
All right, well, we'll see how that works.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't put any on there, I guess I should.
I'm having some difficulty hearing. Did you get that, Dean?
It didn't identify a plant that was as bad as the black walnut for me, because it would do something like that, just in skin contact.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions at all, or? Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up then.
Oh, wait, one. I see
Sorry,
a hand. Louise.
Go ahead.
Yes. Hi, thank you for this, and thank you for Earth Day. Always brings up memories because it's my mother's birthday.
Oh, happy birthday, Mom.
I was with her the very first Earth Day, and for some reason we happened to celebrate or acknowledge Earth Day together several times. So
how wonderful!
A nice memory, and I want to thank you for doing this talk.
Thank you for being here, Louise. I really appreciate it. And I know what it means to be missing a mom, and what a great opportunity to be able to connect with her on Earth Day. Thank you for sharing. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to close out with just a few words, since I happen to remember I had this paper here. Everything we do matters. All that is born of our love, hope, caring, intuition, faith, imagination, and plain old wishing for something better matters to Earth, to our beloveds, to our communities, to nature, to our own hearts. Like glazed donuts matter to Homer Simpson. Even if, like Trevor, the young humanitarian in the movie Pay It Forward, even if we have no clue how or when or to how many, what we do matters. So thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for showing up today and for caring and for being open to listening to something that might be new and outside your experience or interest even. So thank you for being here. And thank you, Dean and Alliant University, for inviting me back. It's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for talking, and I think it's wonderful that we all got to share this Earth Day together. So thank everybody.
Yes.
I thank everybody for being here, and I think that we can go on to do great things from here. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, thank you. How did you like that?
That was very fun. I felt like I went off on some tangents a couple of times and I wasn't sure if I got back, but
It was good. I really thought it was really great.
yeah, it was fun. It was nice to have something to do today, since everything else is canceled, of course. And
yeah, it's been weird to kind of, unless you can do something from home, it's really hard to find. Like I said, I'm missing a lot of the different things I get to do in nature right now.
right.
I don't often get to do things, and now it's even less, so it's kind of crappy. But hopefully this has inspired me to do more once I get able to get out again. I think I'll be spending a lot more time in nature in the future.
Just my own yard. I have stuff I need to be doing out there, and it's always good to be just out my own yard. So
I got a sapling from it's a juniper sapling I'm going to plant today. So hopefully that's my contribution, and maybe it'll grow. And as it grows, maybe other things will gain momentum too.
Fantastic. We have a cat named Juniper, so
I love the juniper tree. It features a lot in mythology and folklore, so it's a great tree.
yeah, true. Well, thank you again, Dean. This was really so meaningful to me to be able to have something to do today. Something
Now, you're
good.
you're a veteran speaker at Alliance, so that's really,
Yeah, right, I know.
I almost feel like we should be giving you adjunct credits or something.
I'm good for that.
Well, thank you very much. You take
Yeah,
care.
thank
Happy
you.
birthday. Thank you. Bye.
Have a good day.